That's right, it's finally time to review a Goosebumps episode on the channel. After talking about it and referring to it in some previous videos, I'm going to talk about the shocker on Shock Street. I can't wait for this one. I think it's a great episode. For anyone not in the know, Goosebumps was an adaptation TV series of horror anthologies taken from the storybooks of R.L. Stine titled Goosebumps. The episode begins with Erin and Marty in some kind of storage area, and what I like about this, there's some masks from previous and other episodes of Goosebumps, like the Toadnator, one of the masks from Calling All Creeps episode of Goosebumps, which is kind of cool, and you've got a few of the masks from the Haunted Mask episode. We get some narrative and exposition from Erin and Marty about the fact they're in the back rooms for the Shocker on Shock Street, which is sort of like their version of the Universal Monsters universe.
These are all Shocker on Shock Street films. I can't believe your dad creates all the monsters for the Shocker movie studios.
Like in most Goosebumps episodes, or The Haunting Hour, or any other shows for that matter, that we get some cutaway of first-person view, someone in the background, watching them, following them. We get a nice shot with a zombie, or something like a zombie, it says melted face. They go over to this table, and the zombie follows them, but if you look at the zombie in the next shot, its head hasn't actually moved, so they must have filmed that bit after. Erin's arm gets grabbed by an animatronic wolf arm, it looks like. It's very hairy, and Marty and Erin scramble with it. Then it does a weird cutaway, which can't be for advertisements because it's only a few minutes in. Then they manage to get the arm off, and the person who's been following them in there is actually Erin's dad. Erin's dad has a bit of a Dr. Wily from a Mega Man look, crossed with the green and yellow of Jim Carrey's The Mask. That's what he kind of looks like. He's got a yellow lab jacket on. It's very garish. We get reintroduced to the Toadnator mask and Snakeface. Erin notices a glowing room in an open doorway. She approaches it, but her dad says never, ever go in that room. He's definitely not happy with her knowing about that room at all. But he calms down and then he shows them something that they will like, and I think this is actually really cool. It is a model of what looks like a new ghost train, and they're going to try it out, or a tram car as they call it.
What do you think?
It's a tram car.
The Shocker Studios tour ride, and we see a little diorama model of the tour, including the famous Shock Street itself. And Erin and Marty are going to be the first two kids to test out the ride before it opens to anyone. And just when we've got back from that tone of him not being happy with Erin being inquisitive about the mysterious room, Erin asks her dad,
Can Mom come with us?
Excuse me?
She loves scary rides.
No.
and for some reason I just found it comical the way he went, no, and just pulled the tram car back into his possession. They're in what appears to be the station, or where they're going to board the ghost train, and what I like about this little bit is, well, I'm going to play it for you.
You're in for a scare.
He said the line! And in case they get into trouble on this ride, don't worry, they're going to be packing heat. They've got laser guns. I'm not actually sure how these laser guns would work, because they're not wired down or strapped into anything. They're not powered by anything else. They're literal guns that fire lasers. The ride begins, and the first tunnel is pretty cool. It's got some hands, prosthetic, and probably some real ones as well, reaching out at them from either side. The second room is really weird. It's got obviously CGI. They are literally being set on fire, and I love Marty's reaction to this. It's just brilliant. They then stop and they witness an electric chair scene. Now, these are obviously not animatronics, and even there you've noticed that there's something wrong here. These are obviously actors of some description. Then we get a call back to the Scarecrow walks at midnight with two scarecrows just swinging at the car. The tram car stops again. This time Marty's had enough. He gets out, and funnily enough, there's a sign, as if it was planned, straight above the car saying, "Do not exit the tram," as a voice tells him.
I repeat, do not leave the tram.
Also, it's at this point I realised that cool green skull on the front and the wings that were on it as well, the bat wings, are not actually centralised on the car, and this just really stuck out to me at this point. Erin and Marty both try to push the tram car, but to no avail, so they decide they're going to have to walk out of this ride. They walk back the way they came, they come across the Toadnator, and they realise, let's use these laser guns, and they use the laser guns, fends the Toadnator off. I'm still pretty certain, I could be wrong, tell me in the comments if I am, that is just a modified version of Calling All Creeps mask from the Calling All Creeps episode of Goosebumps, but it's still kind of cool they're using it here as a bit of a cameo. They come across a button that says, "In case of emergency, press button," as if this was meant to happen. Press the button, get a robotic door opening, and they go through to the light. They walk out, and Erin realises, looking around, that they are on Shock Street. Now, this is a sort of hub-looking area, kind of street area, and this is actually from Centerville theme park in Toronto. Obviously, Goosebumps was a Canadian-made show, so it's kind of cool that this was actually filmed at an actual theme park. Side note, for some reason, we've got these luminous mushrooms everywhere as well, which is different. Marty says it looks just like the movies. Now, the one thing I did realise was, at the start they were told not to get out of the car at all. They couldn't walk down Shock Street, but the tram was going to take them down Shock Street. Now you look at Shock Street, there's no tram track in the middle of Shock Street and it's outside, so I don't know how that was meant to happen, or if there's another Shock Street inside that's mocked up for this ride. But the first thing that came out to me when I saw Shock Street was there was no way that tram was ever going down Shock Street. Marty's just really excited about the fact he's seeing all these bits from the Shock Street series of films. They then proceed to check the shops and other things on Shock Street. When they open the doors, it's really weird. They'll see an actual thunderstorm and Marty thinks it's really cool. I'm just wondering, what's the science behind that? They then decide to go into the arcade. Reluctantly, Marty convinces Erin to go with him. They go into an elevator and down to...
Next floor, toxic waste.
As they exit the elevator, there's toxic waste cans everywhere and there's a metal fence that says warning and there's all these warning signs. Marty decides he wants to investigate. Erin, not so sure. And then out of nowhere, it looks very similar to the zombie they saw earlier in the workshop. Marty gets grabbed through a fence from behind and then proceeds to get electrocuted by this electric fence. There's sparks and things flying around on the fence, but I think this scene goes on for a bit too long considering it's an electric fence, or meant to be an electric fence. Erin is pulling him off and she's not getting any shocks from this fence. I also had to mention that the placing of Marty's body once he falls to the floor is exquisite. He's just laid perfectly out on his back. Erin asks Marty if he's okay. He gets up.
I can feel those volts ripping through my body.
Obviously I jumped the gun a bit there because in their world they thought that was still just for show and just meant to be a scare, but obviously now Marty's felt the electricity for real. They want to get out of there. The elevator doors won't open, so to walk around, and Erin comes around to the idea that
Toxic Creep was no special effect. He was real.
as they continue to walk around in the dark backstage area, they get attacked by, who is it? Piranha Man! And they try to fend him off. Marty actually just goes for the eyes and gouges and pushes him back. And then Erin reminds him, I don't know how they forgot, that they've got the laser guns, so they get those out. And as you see the laser gun, it just reminded me of one of the guns you get in Wild Wild West. The guns aren't working anymore. It seems like they're out of ammo, out of lasers, so Marty and Erin just gun it. Eventually another elevator opens. He's regular and he's fighting with it. Erin goes back to help him. They actually rip the piranha person away and his head is biting on to Marty's clothes and actually just rips off, and we see it's a robot with the necks missing. You see all the machinery. Just as they're running for the elevator, Marty says, wait a minute, and then turns. You see the head still hanging onto his clothes. He says, get it off. She rips it off and they just run for the elevator. As they run for the elevator, the doors are closing and they're just making it in time. But you see this shot where Erin's through, Marty goes through, but he's obviously not made it in time. Not quite made it in time. And you see Esther kind of he pushes back against the doors, which if it was a proper elevator, I don't know if you could actually get away with that if they're strong doors, but it's just funny how we're going to make it in time, and then no, we're not. Cut to some equipment, it pans up. We're in a video room with Erin's dad and he's got 4 women with him who are all dressed identical. I guess they're quadruplets, something like that, and they're all dressed like him as well, and they're just watching what Erin and Marty are doing. Erin's dad then grabs it's like a big remote control car remote. It's obviously for the robots. Looks at it, gives it a thought, and then walks off. Back with Marty and Erin, we are now back on Shocker Street as if they've gone.
Like we went in a circle.
Erin notices her dad hiding behind a statue and then walking towards them. On his headset, obviously talking to the people back in the video room, he says,
It's okay, I've got them now.
Marty's worried. He says, what is your dad going to do? Interesting, this shot. Obviously in the episode itself, this is a park that's not opened yet. This is the Shock Street tour. But in the background, you can see the actual cable cars moving. So I wondered if they filmed this on operational day before the park actually opened to the public. Cable cars, chairlifts in the background moving. Marty looks like he's had enough. He's going to make a run for it. But then he just runs for Erin's dad. Erin's dad grabs him. Then you hear a sort of power down sound, mechanical sound, and Marty just slumps forward, lifeless, and he's standing there. Erin says,
What did you do? What did you do to Marty?
She then tussles with her dad, saying, what have you done to him? What have you done to him?
Let me go.
Erin and Marty are both robots made by the scientist himself. He then looks into one of the cameras, tells them to shut down the power for the tour, and tells all personnel to get onto Shock Street. 2 of the women come out. He then says,
Oh, there was a glitch when they started talking about a mother.
We never programmed them to think they had a mother.
at this point I thought it was weird because the women all are dressed the same, all look the same, and I thought maybe they're robots as well, but the way they come out with that, talking about programming these kids who are robots, I think they're meant to come across as real people, but it's really weird how they seem like robots and they're the real people. Something to think about. The other of the 2 women then says,
It's a shame. These robots were a good way of testing to see if the ride was safe.
so these are 2 robot children who are made to test out the Shocker on Shock Street tram tour ride. 2 women then carry one of the children each on top of their shoulders. Great feat of strength, just carrying them away as they go back to the workshop, as the professor wants to see. Professor or scientist? Which one is it? Maybe it's both. We see the scientist, he's got another Erin and a Marty on the table who is still constructing, and he says, I'm going to call you Erin 2 and Marty 2. And I think at that point, if there was ever a sequel, we'd definitely know that they're robots with names like that. The original Marty and Erin are ominously standing just off to the side, stood up but like slumped down. As the scientist is working on Marty 2, the scientist then says out loud to Marty 2, I hope I've made you more durable than the originals. The original two, then their heads rise, they spring to life, they look at each other, look back at the scientist, give him an evil stare. Erin then puts her hand on his shoulder, scares the scientist and says,
I'd say you made us plenty durable.
At this point, the original Erin and Marty, because we know the twist and we know they're robots, they now have a metallic sound to their voice, which is kind of cool but kind of odd because they never had that before. The scientist grabs the remote control and scrambles, do something with it while saying, but I deactivated you.
Everything wants to live.
Even robots.
Before they move forward, scientists ending the episode. No! I really like this one. I thought it was a great twist at the end. I didn't really ever think there were going to be robots. I thought there might be something devious about what happened to her mum, maybe something to do with the park, maybe Shocker on Shock Street, maybe one of the films. I like the cameos from the masks at the start as well. I thought that was great. I just like the fact it was in a theme park. As a fan of theme parks myself, this felt like a much better theme park episode than even Horrorland did. What did you think of this episode? Put it in the comments below. Did you like this episode? Had you seen it before, or is this a new one? I thought it was a good episode. I thought the twist was good, as I say. The references to masks from previous episodes. I thought the ending could have ended when they got carried off to the back. I don't think we needed that little bit extra of them attacking the scientists. That didn't really need to happen. I thought that was a little bit extra that didn't really need to put in. I mean, it's kind of nice if you like that kind of horror ending, I guess. But what did you think of the episode? Put it in the comments below. What episodes would you like to see me cover next? And thank you for watching. Have a great day and take it easy.